All right, so it is 6 o'clock on the dot, and we are going to be starting another recovery series. This will be kind of tying in our recovery series for the month of October, November, and then starting into December. And we'll be starting some new topics to finish out December, going into January. So today, as promised, and as we talked about a lot, we're going into a really interesting topic. We're going to talk primarily about sleep. Um, Sleep is a really, really fascinating thing to kind of spend some time talking about. And before we start, we're kind of going to go over a once over of just some of the generalized terms that people talk about, what these terms mean, what kind of the leading science is telling us is the importance of these terms and where people fall into. And then we're going to also start out with just kind of giving you some common mistakes and then some quick little helpful hints for how to optimize your sleep or find your personal sleep pattern if you haven't actually been able to find that so far. Um, to start out, we're going to talk about here a lot of the books that we're kind of bringing references to or that we're pulling this information from are things like The Sleep Solution, Sleep Smarter, Why We Sleep, recommendations from the NCAA, recommendations from the American Medical Journal. Sorry if I'm getting, especially the American Medical Journal. I know it's a slightly different name there. But again, if you're ever interested on looking for where we're getting some of this really, really specific information from, again, always just go and ask in the comments, and we'll just go in and send you a direct link to, hey, like this is the article that we pulled this from, or this is the book, chapter, or whatever it is, if you'd like to kind of learn more on your own. We try to give you this information more as a way for you to go deeper in and take a deeper dive into the things that we're talking about. Because like we've always kind of said, we're giving you really brief overview to kind of get a basic understanding. And that if you would like to go more in depth and learn even more, again, we could spend an entire topic today talking just about the circadian rhythm. We're going to only spend about 10 minutes on tops. That's actually where we're going to be starting this, is just kind of breaking down what the circadian rhythm is and what that means for you. So the circadian rhythm is your body's ability to basically cycle through what's considered a day. You know, I got to use quotes there because that's actually an important thing when it comes to circadian rhythm, is your body's 1 day clock in a sense. Since our bodies are kind of regulated on this internal circadian rhythm, we're not completely regulated. Well, we're not really regulated at all by the rising and the setting of the sun. But these kind of helpful cues help our body initiate different phases of our circadian rhythm and naturally come in and out of different areas of our sleep, depending on how we're using it. Now, again, I don't want to confuse terms here. The circadian rhythm is the actual rhythm your body goes through a 24-hour period. So we're not talking just about sleep here. We're talking about your sleep and your awake cycle throughout the entire day. The circadian rhythm, your body's natural circadian rhythm, will change from person to person, but generally speaking, people tend to fall into kind of three large categories. You're either going to fall into something called an early riser, where you naturally prefer to wake up earlier in the morning, and you're going to feel naturally refreshed, and that's how your body's hormone levels and activity level naturally likes to occur. About 40% of individuals fall into that category. Then we have individuals that are considered very late risers, or they like to sleep much later at night. So this being, just to give you kind of time frames here, someone who's an early riser might prefer to go to sleep from 10 p.m. and wake up sometime around 6 a.m., giving them roughly 8 hours of sleep, while other individuals might enjoy going to sleep somewhere later towards the 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. time and giving them 8 hours of sleep. So they're waking up more around somewhere between noon and 11 a.m., depending upon when they like to fall asleep in that category. Again, if your body's natural circadian rhythm kind of gravitates towards waking up later, you're going to have a very hard time finding productivity in these early hours. And these individuals are going to struggle during these 9 a.m. hours. Now, the last 30% of individuals are going to fall somewhere in between of all of that, basically meaning that you may like to go to bed a little bit earlier and wake up much earlier than 6 a.m., or you might like to go to bed a little bit later and wake up, maybe around 9 a.m., 8 a.m. It's your natural body's rhythm that kind of helps you with this. They talk about this a lot being important because during evolutionary times, the benefits of having this natural rhythm is that the group as a whole, they would say, is not going unprotected for very long periods of time. So that being said, if the last group is going to bed at around 2 a.m. and the first group is waking up around 6 a.m., you only have about 4 hours where you're vulnerable to predators. So it makes it that you could have a few individuals that could stay up and protect you during the night. Or if you all decide to sleep, you naturally will have people that are up at different hours to help everyone stay safe. That's why evolutionary speaking, from an evolutionary standpoint, they think this circadian rhythm is different from individuals going down the line, and that this was passed on through generation to generation to generation because of some of the benefits that it gives to large groups as we were living in kind of social beings, able to protect each other and able to work together to have a better structured society in a sense. Now, when we talk about circadian rhythm, we're giving an idea of saying that people are going to want to sleep around 8 hours. But realistically, it actually falls closer to somewhere between 6 to kind of 9 hours, depending on who you are and what your natural REM cycle is and what your natural sleep habits are. That can change the amount of sleep that you may want on a nightly basis. We talk about this generally speaking because there's always outliers. There's always people that will go to bed at 2 a.m. and still have no problem waking up super early in the morning. There are people that like to go to bed at 10 p.m. and wake up still super late. Though these outliers are not nearly as common as we group everyone as kind of like social norms, they still are, relevant to talk about, and they still are important to mention. I think the problem is when we talk about our circadian rhythm and when we talk about our sleep habits, the vast majority of people are putting themselves in this outlier time frame, especially when we get into younger populations in high school, college, and coming out of the 20s, where you may consistently go to bed at something like a 2 a.m. time, and you may still consistently wake up at like a 6 a.m. time, giving yourself a much smaller window of sleep and not truly allowing yourself to go through your proper REM cycle and talk and get that restorative sleep that you need to help develop and rebuild your body. So now that we kind of hit on a very general idea of the circadian rhythm, some of the things that we've talked about here about these general times that your body will naturally go through, we're not going to break down how the rhythm fluctuates throughout the day, but in a nutshell, basically, if you like to wake up earlier, you're going to basically have highs and lows through certain parts of the day, and you're going to have time frames where you're quote unquote peaking. So you may be a 6 p.m. peaker, where at 6 p.m. or at 9 a.m., you're at your absolute most productive. So these are hours that are going to work very, very well for you in either a work environment or a post-work environment, depending on how your actual day comes out. Again, if you're a late riser, you're not going to peak till later in the day to possibly after these typical work hours. So you're never really at your optimal performance for your natural body energy and hormone levels. That's really where, when we break down the circadian rhythm, it gets much, much more in depth. And again, if you'd like to talk about that, always put it in the comments. There are entire books just detailing the circadian rhythm. But again, we just want to give a brief overview of this so you can understand it as we go into sleep. Now, the next term we're going to talk about is REM cycle. Your REM cycle is basically as you're sleeping, when are you going into something called rapid eye movement, REM for REM cycle. Your rapid eye movement is a phase that when you sleep, that your eyes are rapidly moving in various directions, but there's no visual signal being sent back to your brain. We know that when you go into this REM cycle or rapid eye movement cycle, you're getting the best restorative sleep during the night. We know, relatively speaking, that whenever you go to sleep, your body goes through numerous cycles. There's non-REM sleep and REM sleep. So just for an example, we'll just throw out a time here. The first cycle might take 90 minutes for you to go through, where you might have 60 minutes of non-REM sleep, and then you might have 30 minutes of actual REM sleep. As the night goes on and you continue to cycle through your REM sleep, that REM phase gets longer and longer and longer. And the more cumulative REM sleep you get throughout the night, the more restored or refreshed you're going to feel. It's also important to mention that depending on when you wake up and understanding your sleep cycle, waking up in a REM time frame can be very, very I'm trying to think of the word, disorienting. Not in a sense where it's harmful in any way, but that often can be the reason why you wake up and you feel so incredibly tired and feel as if that you haven't really accomplished anything. One of the reasons for that is you're literally breaking one of your best cycles and you're cutting that off and coming out during an inopportune time. So as the night goes on and through this 8-hour window, as you cycle, your non-REM becomes shorter and your REM becomes longer. Now, again, as we're saying, this is generally speaking, and depending on how you have healthy habits, your body can kind of learn, in a sense, to help phase through these cycles, sometimes a little slower, a little faster, depending upon what you're used to and how you're kind of training your body to work with you when it comes to sleep. We're going to get into these components later because this is more of a helpful hints to get restorative sleep. In order to really kind of get an in-depth look on how to change your sleep and how to give yourself drastic benefits, you need a lot of help from trained physicians in these areas that can really break down your sleep cycle for you, where they actually have you sleep on monitors and things like that. It's very, very challenging to do this. So that's why we're going to be talking about some of these tips and tricks in order to kind of hack into your own sleep cycle and figure out what's going to work best for you. We talked previously about how, sorry, my nose is so itchy today. I think it's allergies. We go through anywhere from 6 hours of sleep to 9 hours of sleep, but most people fall somewhere near that 8-hour period, 7 to 8 hours. The reason why it ranges is because if you're able to go through your REM cycles possibly a little bit quicker and have your longer REM cycles happen sooner, you're able to get a better restorative sleep in a certain amount of time. Now, this is not something that everyone can train their body to do, but if you are naturally a person where your body will do that, you may feel more tired getting 8 hours to 9 hours of sleep than you would having 6 to 7, because your body is then going into an even longer and deeper REM cycle after that 6 to 7 hour period, and that will throw off your wake up cycle again. For other people, it can be the exact opposite. It can be they are more of an 8 to 9 hour sleeper, but if they sleep only 6 hours, their body's missing out because, again, you're losing almost a 3-hour window. You're missing out on possibly an hour and a half of your overall REM sleep of the night. And most individuals will have REM sleep from anywhere to 3 to 4 hours. So you're losing almost half of your restorative sleep that helps to rejuvenate your body. Now, I understand that one of the biggest problems that we have with sleep is that individuals do not treat it as if it's something that's a necessity. They treat it as something that they will get whenever they're done with everything else. So specifically to talk about this, people tend to organize their day around what they need to get done and not around what's going to be best for them. That's why we've talked about a ton about diet, exercise, scheduling your time, and now we're touching on sleep. Because like we've mentioned a million times before, if you only have time and you only have assignments and work and all these other things that you have to do to get 6 hours of sleep, that is what you're going to get. And for most individuals, they feel like this is how I'm going to be able to be my most productive. But when you do things like this for an extended amount of time, it starts to wear down your body's ability to do basic things that are going to help you throughout your day. One of the things that it impacts the most can be your circadian rhythm. So the more that you don't get your restorative sleep, the more it messes up the natural balance of your circadian rhythm throughout the day. That means that your peaks are not going to be as peaked. That also means your lows can be much, much lower because you're not helping your body restore and it's not getting its full rejuvenation on a regular period. And whenever you're not sleeping, this is something where I've kind of read both sides about it, but it seems like more things are heading specifically towards it's impossible to ever get your sleep back. Meaning, if you sleep 4 hours a night for 5 days out of the week, and then on the weekends you sleep for 10 hours, those two 10-hour days or those two 12-hour days on the weekend are not going to make up for the sleep that you missed on the Monday through Friday kind of like grind. Now, this obviously makes sense because we've talked about this a million times in a million other different ways, or a million other ways how the body is not able to compensate for repeated abuse by just having a short amount of time where you try to fix it. A great example of this is when we talked about stretching or when we talked about rehabbing your body, that if you're only spending an hour a week trying to actually rehab or restore all the things that you've broken down, and you're exercising anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a week, obviously that time frame is going to get it's a drastic difference. You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to make up for the 20 hours that you're working out by saying, okay, well, let me just try to do 3 hours a day on the weekend to now make it, oh, now I spent 7 hours doing restorative practices. It's not really ever going to go in like that because you've kind of been wearing yourself down consistently Monday through Friday. When we go into something like sleep, it's also very similar. Once you throw off your body's natural cycles and once you start kind of wearing yourself down and you're deteriorating in these different areas, it's going to take more than 1 or 2 days to bring your body back out of that. And then if you go directly back into abusing it again and throw off that cycle for the next week, you're then going to throw yourself off even more and then try to restore it again and not be able to have that kind of like restorative process in only a 2-day period. Again, if this is not making sense, this is something that, again, is a very, very complex topic that we're trying to dumb down in the most simplistic way possible. Again, if you want to know more about this, we always kind of emphasize, talk about it in the comments, and we can dedicate like a whole series to what are the negative things that happen to you when you're not getting your full REM cycle of sleep. Now, we're going to break down really quickly here some of the common mistakes that's going to mess up your natural circadian rhythm. And on top of those natural mistakes, we're going to go into some best practices to try to finish out how we can kind of unlock our best sleep and how we're, as a person, we're going to be able to get the best sleep we possibly can. So one of the common mistakes that we see all the time is obviously fluctuating the amount of sleep you get in a night in a drastic way. So if you're pulling all-nighters and you're working all night and you're only sleeping for 2 to 3 hours for 1 to 2 days at a time, and then when you come back out, you're having naps that are 4 to 5 hours throughout the day because your sleep cycle is so off, we naturally see that this is a common problem of throwing off your circadian rhythm. We've talked about this numerous times, and these terms keep coming up because it's obvious that a nap should not be more than you're actually sleeping in a night. It's obvious that your body really shouldn't need a 4-hour nap in the middle of the day. Now, there are some sleep theories that talk about having longer naps or multiple naps throughout the day instead of having one sleep throughout the night as being something that can be helpful for you. But again, when we talk about these topics, these are individuals that have spent a lot of time trying to hack or figure out what's best sleep for them. And they're just not deciding to do it 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and then going back to a more traditional way of sleeping for the rest of the week. They've committed to this and changed up their own personal cycle for what they feel works best for them for a lifetime rather than just a few days at a time. That's why when these things do work for them, again, this is a lifetime change that they're making in order to have better sleep benefits. It's not just something that they're doing out of necessity. So it's important that you understand that even though other individuals are able to kind of like drastically alter their sleep patterns. You can't do this and have incredible success if you're just doing it out of necessity for 1 to 2 days every now and then. So some of the other common mistakes that we have is really it's the devices that we choose when we're deciding to go to sleep. One of the things that can be kind of hardest on the eyes and the body, and everyone kind of recommends to stay away from, is being on your phone or a computer and having that kind of blue light affecting your eyes can really have a negative kind of process on then trying to go to bed and having restorative sleep, because it very much can wear down your eyes and kind of make you very tired, and you're kind of pushing through all of that. And then naturally, your body will need to have some type of recovery before you just head off and go directly to bed. Similar to this, it can also be the same with someone who likes to eat or drink directly before they go to sleep as well. So sometimes having a poor schedule of how you're working and how you're doing things can mess up your overall sleep pattern, depending upon the activities you're doing before you go to sleep. Um, Again, I know that seems like it's a little bit that I'm throwing at you that's very conceptual, but again, this is something where just the use of electronics throughout your day and that sustained use of electronics, especially before sleep, people again have written books entirely on the detriments of doing that and how it directly impacts your sleep. So again, we're kind of simplifying a little bit more complex things here. And if you'd like to know more, we're happy to give you those resources. We're happy to give you those references to kind of look into. And if there's anything that you're uncertain about here, again, you don't really need to ask us. Go look out on your own. I mean, you can start out with just a quick little Google question, see what sources it recommends. We always recommend to look for scholarly, journally articles, or go look for books that are highly recommended and also show their references in the back themselves and really show you why is the author an expert in this field, and why do they know more than your average individual. So another common mistake that I think is really kind of, it's looked past by the vast majority of individuals, especially in the age ranges of around like 14 all the way to 30, is when you're thinking about your sleep, you have to think about it as an entire process. So one of the things that I've always felt is really important to having good sleep is understanding and training your body to understand that your bed is meant primarily for sleeping. Now, I know there's a lot of jokes to say when I say a phrase like that, when I say your bed is primarily for sleeping. Obviously, there's a million things you can do in a bed, but specifically what we're talking about staying away from is things like eating or snacking in your bed, sitting in and watching TV in your bed, or kind of doing other activities that you could do in other areas of your house or apartment. And you're kind of untraining yourself to understand what your bed is kind of made for. Um, to kind of go a little bit deeper into what we're talking about here, we're going to kind of go into like more of a habit based thing, right? If every time I get into my bed, I know that this is going to revolve around, oh, I get into bed and I put my head on my pillow, I go to sleep. Your body kind of naturally starts with your circadian rhythm and kind of mental training to understand, oh, when I get in bed and my head hits the pillow, I go to sleep. Now, if you're the type of person who likes to lay down in bed and watch TV, your body starts to lose a little bit of that training and a little bit of that mentality that, oh, yes, I'm laying in bed, but what are we going to do? Are we going to read a book? Are we having a snack right now? Are we going to watch TV right now? What are we doing? Because I'm always in this kind of laying down position when I do a lot of activities. One of the best ways to help yourself not have tossing and turning at night and not have some of that initial sleeplessness that a lot of people suffer from is understanding that whenever they lay down to go to bed, and this kind of can be laying down in general, when I lay down, I'm going to sleep. And my body naturally starts to go through that cycle, and it naturally starts to kind of prep myself and mentally tell myself, oh, okay, you laid down in your bed, you put your head on the pillow, the lights are off, you closed your eyes. You do this every single day at the same exact time. We know that you're getting ready to go to sleep. So when we give a lot of our helpful hints, a lot of our helpful hints are talking about retraining your body to know that you specifically would like to go to sleep now, and that it naturally knows that it wants to go into these cycles. So another common mistake that goes along with using your bed for a million different activities, because you don't have a living room, you don't have a desk to work at, you don't have some of these other things, is also changing up the time that you go to sleep. These two things go together really, really well, because like I said, a lot of our helpful hints are about training yourself to go to sleep in a consistent, reliable manner. If you keep changing the hours that you go to sleep, you might go and lay down on your couch right around 10 p.m. and suddenly feel very, very tired. But you're saying, no, 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 I'm putting on a movie. I want to stay up now. So now, even though your body's going into kind of a natural rhythm of going to sleep, you're telling your body, no, 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 we're staying up. Tonight, I really want to see this movie. So I'm going to stay up, 2.5 hours later. And I'm going to mess up my natural circadian rhythm. So instead of going down into a sleep phase, it might start to bring me back up into a wake phase. And then in 2.5 hours, when it's 12:30 and I'm ready to go to bed, I may be sleepless. I may be laying there going, oh man, I was so tired at 10, but now I'm wide awake again. And your hormone levels went back up and everything went back up again. And now at 2:30, as you're trying to go to sleep, you're laying in bed and you're wondering what happened. Well, one, you messed with your natural circadian rhythm, your hormones level changed, but also as you lay down to go to bed, your body says, hey, we did this 2 hours ago. It was movie time. Why is it sleep time now? What's the difference? What's going on here? Why are you changing up so much as our body is this incredible organism that can do a million and one different things, it's important to understand that it is like we learn as we go on throughout life. So if we keep messing with our body's learned traits, we start to mess up our natural patterns and natural rhythms. These are kind of the really common mistakes. We can kind of always spend an entire video going into how jet lag messes up the circadian rhythm, which is incredibly fascinating. But everyone kind of understands that when you're changing time zones, your body's on one clock, but now the clock has changed to be something completely different. And now you're trying to change your natural wakefulness. I will say that this is one of the really important reasons, or probably one of the most common things that we see people try to combat. So whenever you go into professional sports, the Olympics, any type of organized sport, you notice that they never show up a day before their game. If the NFL is flying to London, a lot of times they'll try to get there a week or 2 weeks before their game actually starts. The reason why they do this is because they want to change their body's circadian rhythm so it can peak at the proper time. They always play around the same times every week. They always play around the same days every week. They naturally go to sleep and wake up around the same times every week. So their bodies become trained to have a certain rhythm. Now, when they go overseas and time changes by, I don't know, let's say 6 hours. I really don't know the difference between here and London, but let's say anywhere from five to 6 hours. Their body's telling them that it's 10 p.m., but in reality, in London, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. So when they're naturally going to want to go to sleep, they think it's 10, but really they stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning. So then when they go to wake up 8 hours later, like we talked about, they're waking up at 11 a.m. or noon, and it might be game time in an hour or two. That's not going to work. While naturally, it might have been 10, they would have woke up at 6, they would have been nice and refreshed, and 6 hours later, when they're going into more of a peak time frame, they're now going to be at their most tired, if that kind of makes sense as we change through things. So if they woke up at 11, that 6 hour later period is more of a 5 o'clock, and they're not going to, that's after their game's going to be played. So one of the reasons why they give almost a week to 2 weeks in advance is because whenever you change time zones, it takes about 1 day to change your circadian rhythm by about 1 hour, generally speaking. So if your time zones were changed by 5 hours, it may take you 5 days to adjust and really be able to combat that natural sleep cycle and come back to being comfortable. Now, again, they're going to be flying back directly after that trip. Now, on a side note, whenever you're going back in time, it's a little bit easier than going forward in time. But again, a whole nother thing can be broken down about just the science of changing time zones and hacking your circadian rhythm. But just in case you're interested in it, it's roughly 1 hour for every day. So basically every day that you're in the new time zone, you're going to adjust by 1 hour every single time. It's just historically speaking, because we're not going to go on 3-month vacations. After 5 days, you're going to be headed home again. So right as you start to really get used to sleeping in your new time zone, you're heading back home, and then you have to do it all over again. So now that we spent a half hour talking about sleep, we're actually getting to the point that you guys are kind of here for. Here's the actual point to what the video is: how to unlock or kind of hack your sleep to have better sleeping habits. We briefly talked about a lot of these, so we're just going to shoot through them and kind of the common tips that everyone kind of goes for. One of the first things you want to do is, we always talk about this, is organizing or scheduling your time. So we want to make sure that we organize what time we're going to sleep in a night, and what time that's going to be going to sleep, and what time that's going to be waking up. We want to do this on a consistent basis, again, and we want to find a time frame that works with our natural circadian rhythm. The great thing about today's world with all this technology we have is when you go into using your iWatch and this and that and blah, 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 they can tell you how restful your sleep was. So that being said, they can tell you, yes, you had a very restful sleep last night. Oh, you did not have a very restful sleep last night. At what points in the night were you more restful than others, and what those possible issues would be. So one of the easiest things to do is you're going to have a consistency in the time you go to sleep and a consistency in the time that you wake up. We want to make sure that this is a time where our bodies naturally are going to feel tired. So understanding that everyone's going to naturally want to go to sleep right around that 10 o'clock time, we want to make sure to give ourselves 3 to 4 days where we kind of test this out and we say, hey, I don't want to take any naps. I just want to stay up throughout the entire day. Today, I'm going to go to bed at 10 p.m. And I'm going to try to wake up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and 7 a.m. So I want to give myself 7, 8, and 9 hours of sleep. And I want to see when I wake up on those days, giving myself 3 to 4 days, is there days where I feel better than others? Now, we want to try to do this to unlock, well, what's a good time frame for when we like to wake up? Am I a 7-hour, 8-hour, 9-hour? Where do I kind of feel like I'm at my best there? Now, again, we've talked about consistency in your sleep. So you may want to give this 2 or 3 days of waking up at the same time consistently to try to find the times that work best for you. If you try this and after 3 to 4 days at each time frame, you're like, I'm not really noticing a difference. One of the things that you could want to analyze is, hey, am I falling right to sleep at 10 p.m.? Or am I staying up in bed? Am I tossing around till 10:30, 11 o'clock? My next suggestion would be, okay, well, let's see if your natural circadian rhythm is more of an 11 p.m. Sleeper. So now we're going to try to go to sleep at 11 p.m. And again, we're going to try to wake up at our 7, 8, and 9 a.m. Now, for those of you that have jobs that are going to need to wake up at 9 a.m., this is where we're naturally going to have to say, well, here's an actual life obstacle that can't be changed. So what are we going to do to try to work around this? We still want to sleep 6, 8, or 9 hours throughout a night. 7, 8, or 9 hours throughout a night. But we're going to try to get ourselves into a more mindful time frame when we wake up and when we go to sleep. So one of the things that we talk about a lot is kind of doing a brain dump, or basically like a form of meditation. If you come to some of our previous videos, we talk about this. When you get into bed, before you go to sleep, kind of working on a few little breathing techniques, relaxing your body, giving yourself 10 to 15 minutes. So I'd be getting into bed at right around 9:45, giving myself 10 to 15 minutes to kind of just go through some breathing techniques, get myself nice and calmed, get everything kind of out of my head so that my head's not racing, and then naturally allow myself to fall asleep. Now I gave myself that 15-minute time frame, so I'm directly trying to fall asleep as close to 10 as possible. And then when I wake up, I can then check again, hey, 7, 8, or 9 hours, which one's working the best for me? If these things aren't working, one of the things you can do is look at your watch and see, hey, does my watch say I'm staying asleep throughout the night, or am I tossing and turning unknowingly a lot? This will give you an idea if possibly you need new pillows, new blankets, if the bed's too old, if maybe there's an adverse temperature in the room that you don't realize that, hey, it was really, really hot last night, so I was tossing and turning the entire night. Or I was sleeping with my wife, girlfriend, significant other, whatever you want to say, and they kept kicking me every 4 hours. So that was messing up my entire sleep cycle as well. But again, we're just looking for common things that are going to help us get a proper amount of sleep. One of the things I do suggest is kind of be mindful of your napping. Um, we talked about a common mistake is people try to nap to make up for the sleep that they lost, and that's not really a possibility. Everyone, when they talk about napping, talks about napping in under that 30-minute to an hour time frame. Anything longer than that, you're going to go into your REM sleep, and that can throw off your natural circadian rhythm. I think a lot of people assume that, oh, they need a nap in order to make it through the day. There are a lot of individuals where this can be incredibly helpful, but myself included, I'm not really a napper. If I try to take a nap, 30 minutes is not going to do it, and I'm probably going to end up napping for 2 to 3 hours. Once you're napping for 2 to 3 hours, that's not really a nap anymore. You know, I mean, that's a very, very, very long time to take a break throughout your day. Um, Commonly, you'll find when you take those long naps, you're not able to then sleep at night. So you want to find ways using exercise and diet and things like that to try to get a little bit more umph out of your circadian rhythm so you're not at such a low, and help kind of bring those hormone levels up a little bit. And again, we're talking about natural ways of doing it through diet, exercise, things like that. We're not just going to pound down a coffee or sugars or anything of that nature, but going out for a light jog, getting a stretch, some exercise in, just something to help bring our hormone levels up. Listening to music, things like this can help wake us up, get us through the day. And then when it is time to go to sleep, our body will be able to cycle directly into sleep much, much easier. So we talked about letting down less napping. We talked about consistent times to go to bed. We talked about making sure, and again, you can have a million jokes on this, but trying to use your bed for as limited things as you possibly can. Training your body to understand that, hey, this is the time I go to sleep, this is the place I go to sleep, and this is what I'm doing, is a really good way of getting your mentality and getting your brain to kind of say, oh, it's bedtime, let's shut down. And you naturally will bring yourself into that nice, easy, relaxing sleep state. For many of us, we mentioned how what's keeping us up is our mind racing on different things. We talked about one, getting kind of that brain dump and getting everything out when we go to sleep. Now, another thing is a lot of individuals have a hard time waking up. So now we're going to break down kind of some of the tips and tricks on some of the best ways to wake up. So I'm not a huge believer, and there's not a ton of research that suggests that those 5 or 6 alarms are being helpful for you in any way, shape, or form. So hitting your alarm and being a 5 snoozer to where you try to wake up at 6 a.m., but you're really not waking up until 6:45 or 7:15, and you've hit your alarm 5 or 6 times, you may feel that, oh, this is something that helps me wake up. But in reality, you may just be actually waking up when your body is naturally cycling back up again. So I think it's important to understand that using that alarm clock can always be kind of jarring and pulling you out of sleep in a very unnatural way instead of bringing you out kind of naturally. One of the best ways to kind of like have a better natural pull out of sleep is alarm clocks can sometimes adjust volume. So they're not going to immediately turn on and go, bat, 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 bat. They're going to start really, really gradually, where it might be like a 15-minute time frame, where it might be the sound of, birds chirping. And it might start, like chirp, 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 chirp. And then as time goes on, it's chirp, 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 chirp. And your body is naturally starting to wake up to soft sounds in its surroundings that's not jostling it and abruptly bringing you out of sleep, but naturally telling the body, hey, it's time to wake up. These alarms tend to be much more successful at getting you up and out of bed and having a much easier wake up than just an alarm that goes bat, bat, bat. Even though some people do feel that they may sleep through these types of alarms. It is something that you may want to try because a lot of people have success with this. Now, if you're not a huge person on an auditory alarm or something you hear, there is also the secondary where a lot of people can put a module under their pillow, and when it's time to wake up, that's going to vibrate. And it's going to give you a little bit of a buzzing, which is going to be a little bit of a sound, but it's also going to be vibrating your pillow or giving you some type of a stimulus, kind of like a gentle nudging. So when that alarm starts to go off, again, instead of someone coming in and just shaking you awake, you're going to naturally go, oh, I'm starting to kind of feel a vibrating. It's not a very loud noise that's alarming. Here, I'm coming out of sleep naturally a little bit easier. Again, you might set your alarm for 6:15, you might not wake up till 6:30 in the morning. This is something where with these methods, you're going to have to experiment a little to say, hey, these don't wake me up right away. They wake me up more gradually. So I may want to look and set my alarm for 5:45 if I plan to wake up at 6. And then when I wake up at 5:50 or 6 a.m., I feel much more restored and much more relaxed because my body is naturally bringing me back into an awake cycle rather than just jarring me into an awake cycle. Lastly, my my kind of final way to wake up and my favorite personally is I have these like Philips Hue lights. There's a million different brands that have them, but basically they're a light that I can have an app on my phone, and pretty much if I want to wake up at 6 a.m., they're going to naturally simulate sunrise. So basically, the light's going to turn on very, very dim and then slowly get brighter and brighter and brighter. For some individuals, if you like to sleep with a hand over your face or like you want to put a blanket over your head or whatever it might be, this may not work for you. But for me, this wakes me up and I feel fantastic every time I wake up whenever I do use this, because for me, it kind of simulates the natural sunrise, and it kind of tells my body, hey, it's time to wake up. It's daytime again. Um, I've also found that when I use this method, I tend to wake up about 15 minutes earlier. I like to kind of set like a just in case alarm, but if I plan to wake up at 6 a.m., I'll set a just in case alarm where it's going to be a loud, abrupt one at 6:15. So there's no way I'm going to be late, you know? But I'm also going to set my alarm to my lights to turn on at 5:45. I'll almost always wake up 5:50 to 6:05, somewhere around that time frame. Even if um, even once I get myself conditioned to this, even if I forget to set my alarm, I'll naturally wake up around that same time frame, and I'll always wake up before my alarm officially goes, hey, I'm going to have that really loud, abrupt one that's going to force me to wake up because I've naturally trained my body. Hey, this is the time you like to wake up. You naturally go through a rhythm where I like to wake up right around 5:30 in the morning. It's a really good cycle for me. When I get out of that cycle, I tend to mess with me a little bit more. But these are things that I kind of noticed that as I'm using these alarms, I need an alarm less and less and less. And that's kind of the big hack that we're going to talk about here. The more that you unlock your own sleep and the more that you find consistent patterns in your sleep, the less you're going to find that you need tricks or alarms or anything like that to help you keep your sleep throughout the day. Obviously, you always want to have these as a backup because you can't wake up 3 hours late and be late to work like the vast majority of us. But this is a great time for you to kind of learn how to naturally wake up on your own, unlock or really be in tune to your body's natural circadian rhythm, go to sleep and wake up very effortlessly and feel better in the mornings. We mentioned, just to kind of round out everything, because I know this is going a little bit long, that we don't want to have those consistent jarring wake ups. And even though we don't want to hit the snooze 5 or 6 times, it's important to understand that not all of us are going to wake up and be pumped to be awake. We're naturally going to be going, oh, we're awake, but maybe I want to get more sleep. It's important that we use some techniques, and I'm a big believer in this. I like to use some light meditation or just some consistent activities in my day to help wake me up. That's why I love to shower in the mornings personally. I know everyone's different. They might want to shower at night, or they'll shower at night and in the morning. But I love to wake up, get out of bed, hop in the shower, and I'm absolutely ready for my day. If you're someone where you might say, hey, every morning I wake up and I drink a cup of coffee and I feel great, again, that could be something that worked great for you. We'd like to stay away from things that have chemicals and hormones and things like that. Well, not really hormones, but basically a chemical like caffeine to help us wake up. We'd like to really naturally wake our body up and find that rhythm that works the best. But as we're going through this, we're not going to try to torture ourselves. We just want to try to have a better natural sleep cycle. I feel like there's one more thing I want to touch on before we end this today. I lost it. Okay, so sorry about that. So again, as we wake up, we want to have a nice, easy wake up. We want to make sure that we're not pounding that alarm clock 5 or 6 times. We want to make sure that we're having little things, maybe wake up, stretch, wake up, do some yoga, something that's going to help us bring us into a more awake state and get us out of bed. And again, we just want to make sure that we're not going back into a sleep and throwing off our cycle again. Just a consistency that works out the best. That's going to wrap up everything today, talking about unlocking our sleep. Again, we talked about a lot today. We kind of went nonstop for 45 minutes. If there's anything that you want to know that's more specific about the things that we talked about, or get a deeper dive into it, as always, talk about it in the comments. Going into our next few weeks here, first thing we're going to talk about next week is supplementation. I say supplements, but I also mean kind of natural herb remedies as well. We're not going to get too far into anything crazy, but we are going to talk about what's the purpose of supplementation. Why are people taking creatine? Why is it effective? And why sometimes it doesn't matter. Why people take whey protein? Why is it effective? Why sometimes it doesn't matter. Why you should be using sometimes a diet to kind of make it better. Maybe there's other options. We're going to be talking about just supplementation as a whole. We're going to take a deep dive into that and kind of breaking down why certain supplements are taken, their effect on the body, and what's alternative ways to do it so you can make a decision on your own. After that, we're going to kind of be mapping it out. So we've talked so much about so many different topics. We're going to do a breakdown and just put up some kind of like general schedules for like, hey, we've talked about diet, we've talked about exercise, we've talked about sleep, we've talked about all this. Well, we've talked about so many things. How do you put it all together? That's what we'll be doing. We'll kind of be mapping out this journey for you, putting it all together into one thing and saying, hey, we talked about all these different topics. Now, how do you actually put them into your everyday life? And then the last topic that we're going to talk about to finish out our December series, we'll probably do that just based on whatever recommendations there are. So again, if there's anything that you would like to know about, just throw it in the comments there. We may talk to different student governments on campus, things like that, see if there's topics that they're into, and we'll let them decide the last one for December, all right? Have a great night, guys. Again, have a fantastic weekend. Hope you all had a great holiday.